The first time I heard the name was when it dropped from the lips of Lauren Schuler-Donner in her office, several years ago. And indeed, I suppose, like the rest of the world, I associated it with another quite well-known show that has X in the title, but I was disabused of that. I think Ian McKellen, is a mutant.
I hate to admit it, but I think I'd heard of it, but I was not into comics as a kid.
The whole thing is new to me, I'm sorry to say. I didn't grow up reading comic books really at all.
I knew of it, but it wasn't until I got this film where I really started reading the comics and becoming a big fan, actually.
It's almost thinking of Harrison Ford in Star Wars, thinking you promise you're going to put the little creatures in afterward. I'm not going to look like an asshole here. So let's just hope we look good.
What is a muse? Because I don't really know.
I really have never read comic books. As a kid, I never read them. Of course, once I got the part, I thought, oh, whoops, I better start finding out about it.
My children enjoyed watching the cartoon on Saturday mornings, and I'd watch it sometimes with them, and I enjoyed it very much. But I didn't completely understand it totally until I did get the role of Sabretooth.
I had seen the cartoon on television when I was younger, but I'd never really been a comic book person. But I am now.
I don't even have a full copy of the script.
We were able to put together the cast because of Bryan, first and foremost. Because Bryan isn't known for doing a comic movie. He sent the message out to the cast that, you know, his vision was more reality-based.
If it were up to me, I'd lock them all away. It's a war. It's the reason people like me exist.
When departing from things that the fans have come to be comfortable with, I always try to at least remain respectful to the essence of the characters. And since the characters over 38 years have gone through so many different transformations, it's an awful lot to choose from.
Bryan's very smart. Bryan has put heart and soul into this in terms of finding a way to tell this story that makes sense, is realistic, is not goofy, and he's completely absorbed by that and going after it. He tries to make sure that the logic makes sense, that the core fans are going to be satisfied. But he, too, doesn't come out of that core fan audience. He's only recently been grafted into that. And so he appreciates that, but also appreciates what it is that makes a good movie and a good script.
I think from reading the script, I had had much more of a comic book sense of the world and a fantasy sense. I think it's an excellent decision because it creates a believable environment for our heroes.
The history that these writers have developed for these characters is astounding. It's incredibly elaborate. And Bryan has tried to insert as much of that history as possible, to make it as real as possible and to draw the audience in and say, this really exists somewhere.
He could be a valuable addition to us here.
He's not one of us.
But he is. Don't forget that.
Fine. But if you put a guy like that in a combat situation, there's no way he's going to take orders.
Give him an order worth following, he'll take it.
I think what's interesting about X-Men is each mutant ability or each character has both a blessing and a curse. Cyclops, has this incredible energy that comes from his eyes, but he can never really, look at another human being with his naked eyes without destroying them. And, being a psychic and having your head filled every day with the thoughts of other people. And just, there's all these different dichotomies and anti-heroisms in the universe. And I find that really interesting.
Like, if you could sit there and imagine that right now, someone would walk through the door and blast a hole in the wall with his eyes, you would be A, scared, be amazed and see, once you had time to let it settle in, go, what the hell was that? And should I be scared of that? Does that put me at any risk in whatsoever?
Are mutants dangerous?
I'm afraid that's an unfair question, Senator Kelly. After all, the wrong person behind the wheel of a car can be dangerous.
Well, we do license people to drive.
Yes, but not to live.
Mankind always fears something more powerful than itself. That's always a direct threat. And as people evolve and mutate, that threat becomes greater. And the human race has to react in a way that either goes to war over it or deals with it.
I was afraid if I went to hospital, they would treat you like a mutant. We're not what you think. Not all of us. Tell it to the ones who did this to me.
These issues of that are very relevant in society today, of how we live with people who are different from ourselves, who we may fear or feel uncomfortable about, and how we can create a society in which everyone can coexist together happily and creatively and productively, is what lies at the center of this, and a fundamental argument that finally violence isn't going to be the way to go.
You Homo sapiens and your guns.
That's enough, Eric.
Let them go.
And I think that's been the particular appeal of this comic strip, that it has taken a fantasy look at what it is like to be considered so unusual by society at large that they're prepared to think of you as less worthy than they are to live.
Let them pass that law and they'll have you in chains with a number burned into your forehead.
It won't be that way.
Then kill me and find out.
It's Bryan who embraces this Martin Luther King versus Malcolm X approach to the values that are being presented. And I think he's doing a good job at that.
Everybody tried to find the most interesting characters among the X-Men, and the ones that were selected, A, were thought to be very interesting, and B, they were characters that worked well together.
The first actor that we went to was Ian McKellen, Sir Ian McKellen.
I think Ian McKellen, is a mutant. Being a gay man, I'm often thought to be too dangerous and too unusual, too abnormal to be allowed into society as a whole. And that, therein lies my interest in mutants. But I know, speaking to Marvel Comics, that it's not just gay people who identify with mutants, it's other minorities too, religious minorities, racial minorities.
Mankind has always feared what it doesn't understand. They have laws like the All-Mutant Registration Act.
The intention of the Mutant Registration Act.
Intentions! Intentions! We know all about the road to hell and what it's paved with. We're not talking about intentions. We're talking about mankind, its fear. And trust me when I tell you it's only a matter of time before mutants will be herded into camps, studied for weaknesses, and eventually wiped off the face of the earth. Well, I'm much more giving than that. I simply want to show you, to help you understand. Well, don't fear God, Senator, and certainly don't fear me.
Not anymore.
He is an interesting kind of villain because he's not a villain in the conventional sense. He actually has seen in the past how minorities or people have been singled out and murdered. His family killed in a concentration camp when he was very young, and he harbors that fear and resentment for the fate of mutant kind. but as he's grown older, he's taken it to an extreme.
And I ask only one thing in return. Don't get in my way.
And I think once we had both Bryan and Ian, other actors were aware that, oh, this is a more serious, this will be a much more interesting and complex movie.
Get out of my bar, freak.
As an actor, I always would have said playing someone who is alive and famous would be the hardest task, because everyone can recognize, everyone knows, and if that person is still around, then you've got this huge responsibility. But I have to say, playing someone like Wolverine is equally, if not more, responsibility, because Wolverine is a hero to many people. I mean, he's a real person, he's a real character, and in their imaginations, he is as close to their heart as a family member, you know. I've heard of people with tattoos of Wolverine. It's quite extraordinary. So it's an honor to play it, really.
He's sort of the fan favorite in a lot of ways. Cut from the same mold as I guess Steve McQueen, Clint Eastwood, and that ilk, because he's such an emotionally torn character, and he's such a reluctant hero.
Help us. Fight with us.
Fight with you, or join the team, be an X-Man. There's a war coming. You sure you're on the right side?
At least I've chosen a side.
Well, the movie I did before this was The Life of Dorothy Dandridge, and it was all on my shoulders. So this has been a nice departure from that, because I get to just be a part of. Sometimes it's nice to, you know, sort of blend in and do your part and go home, and not have the weight of the whole production, or sometimes the weight of the world on your little shoulders. I've never worked on a movie that, you know, that was so full of special effects and action. So this is a chance for me to grow and to learn and experience a different kind of acting. It's very foreign to me.
So many visual effects and stunts and things like that. It takes just a lot of time, and I think that that just is the challenge, is putting the time. That's the real endurance of making a movie like this. All right, perk up.
Film is always creating an illusion from moment to moment anyway, so film acting is a lot more dealing with green screen or special effects, and you just hope that they're going to look great later.
The point, I hope, of these special effects will not be that, Hollywood wizardry is improving and changing with every movie that's made, but rather what amazing talents these mutants have. So that the technology will be believed and fantastic it may be, but believable, because these are fantastic characters.
You must be Wolverine. That remarkable metal doesn't run through your entire body, does it?
One of the first questions I asked about this, is this a special effects movie? And I would definitely say that's not the genre. And from what I've seen cut up, without the special effects, it completely holds. The storytelling is in the characters, it's in the faces, it's in the intentions, it's in why the people are there, why they're striving for what they're striving for. And that's what's going to make the movie. The special effects is just going to be icing.
It's pure coincidence if I look back into the early days when I first began working in film. There was movies like Life Force I did for Tobe Hooper, which was a science fiction movie. Excalibur, which was fantasy, but which yet again, you know, had special effects in it. And certainly Dune, of course. These things litter my career in such a way that I know people feel that I must be especially attracted to them. That isn't the case. I'm not even a science fiction fan. It's simply the way a career has fallen out. but it is a necessary part of filmmaking of this kind. I feel that I have done my time in front of green screen and blue screen, or in front of duvetine, or acting with X's marked on the top of a C-stand.
It's frustrating. And I'm afraid, Gene. Knowing he's out there somewhere. I had hoped we'd be much more prepared before it came to this.
Let me try.
Not yet. When you're ready.
I am ready. I know it. I can feel my power expanding all the time.
Yet in the Senate hearing...
I know. I lost control.
I just don't want to see you get hurt.
Just watch these guys, and watch Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart, and now here I am acting with them, and it's amazing to me. But these are guys who have such incredible voices, first of all. But the amount of training that they've had, you just sit there in a scene with them and go, if I could talk like that, I would have such a better career.
I don't see any reason why you shouldn't get these kinds of people to be in this movie. It's kind of saying that that would be saying that it's just a comic book movie and there's no real acting involved. And, I consider myself an actress, and I find this really a lot of fun to do, and I'm feeling really sort of fulfilled by doing this kind of movie, and you get to work with people like Bryan Singer and Ian McKellen and all these people, we're not just sort of it's not just a waste of people's time, it's really
cure me.
more than just a comic book movie.
Hey, kid.
Hey, Logan.
You treating you okay?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I think I might stay.
That's great, kid.
What about you?
A couple of days. There's not much here for a guy like me.
Logan, would you mind if I joined you downstairs?
Then again,
I'll see you later, right?
Because it is a bigger budget film, it doesn't have what some lower budget films bring to them, where everybody in 2 days becomes like a family, just because of the fact that there's, the trailers are smaller, or the time in which you have to shoot scenes are shorter, or whatever it is. Because it's expanded over a longer period of time, there's a lot of waiting around in between. It doesn't always make for that same family contact, but in this case, I think we're really lucky with all the people that have been assembled in this film.
We too have so many characters to keep track of and pay off, and make sure that their arc and their character makes sense all the way through. And that's it's difficult to do, to give everybody a meaningful role as we get to the end of the plot.
But I've had Mystique here keep you company. She takes so many shapes.
I actually didn't really feel like a big part of the movie, because I was always kind of isolated in my dark little painting room. Initially, Mystique, she's the poser. I was hired to be the poser in the movie, so, it wasn't much of a stretch, and also sitting through hours and hours of hair and makeup, I've had to do that before. Mystique was originally the character that, she morphs into other characters. So at the beginning of the scene, she's ta-da, I'm Mystique, and then she morphs into somebody else who does all the action, and then ta-da, I'm Mystique at the end of the scene. And Fox ended up really loving the image, and so they added a couple fight scenes, and it ended up kind of growing, I think, over the course of the production.
In this film, I barely have to do anything, thank God, because that can be very grueling and difficult. But no, because the character that I play, Jean Grey, because everything happens with her mind, she's really not physically active in any way. I just get slimed once by Toad.
Toad, we've actually changed most drastically from the comic. What we did with the film was we made Toad dangerous. He's a very sadistic character. He's very evil and manipulative, and enjoys the the cat and mouse. He enjoys the taunting and the teasing.
Really, I specialise in martial arts, Chinese martial arts and gymnastics. And because of Toad's character, he's very acrobatical, he's very, leaping about, bounding, jumping on walls, bouncing off walls, flipping. He's got very powerful legs. So that's where I come in, and I can, execute my martial arts and gymnastics and try and bring Toad to life and use some of my skills.
Quit playing around.
I've come from a background of 11 and a half years as a professional wrestler. Wrestling is actually done on the hardest stage in the world. It's a four-sided stage where you can't hide anything. It's all out there, it's all go and quick. But it's a natural transition because you do take on a character when you are wrestling. You take on a total different persona, and it translates very easily into the acting field.
You owe me a scream.
Hey, Bob, I'm not finished with you yet.
I think the Star Trek movies that I've worked on are very similar to this movie in a couple of ways. Number one, it's really more about the characters than it is about the action. One of the things that I've said as we market this movie, it's much more like Star Trek than it is like Star Wars. You grow to love the characters. There is some action along the way that'll be fun, but it is the characters that you really want to go see and be with.
One thing I was warned from people who've done movies that take a long time and big budget is that, it'll feel a bit piecemeal and you won't feel the whole. And I spoke to a couple of those people since. I said, you know what, I haven't experienced that at all. I feel there's a real sense of ensemble. When we get on and we rehearse together, we do it off stage, we rehearse, we go out together, we chat together, we're very much not hanging out just in our own trailers. It's quite a close group. The X-Men are becoming a team,
We now deal with audiences that are so jaded, that have seen just about everything. 12-year-olds talk about films as if they are directors. They know when shots are not, when the continuity is off or whatever. I mean, it's amazing when I overhear these conversations. Everybody's a filmmaker today. So I think it becomes harder and harder to please people.
I mean, I think that packaging something in a sort of entertaining and kind of light way, people will go to this movie and have a really good time watching it and get involved in these characters and then come out of it and really be thinking about things.
It's such a metaphor for life. Sure, this movie is about mutants and they have really cool special powers and that's not really realistic, but what the message is very realistic, and I'm hoping that children and adults alike will be able to translate that into our everyday, layman life.
It's operating on 2 or 3 levels all the time, which makes for interesting work making the film and hopefully for viewing too. And in that respect, I think it will span the whole range of cinema goers.
Whatever makes a great film is that you care about the characters and everybody can identify with them and share the journey. And I think this is quite a journey. It's been
Invigorating being back with Bryan again. And all the actors, without exception, are absolute delights and honeys. And I'm sorry I haven't got to know them better, but we're not always in the same scenes. But I know that we've all agreed to do the sequel, so maybe my chance should be to get to know them better then.